But then also I'll say this too. I'm bisexual, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of people, whether they're gay or straight, that just don't believe that bisexual is an option,
Mm-hmm.
or is like an existing preference.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, I think my whole thing is I always have felt that it's funny because I feel like there are a lot of straight people that say like you can't be bi, you can just be gay. And then again, I know a few gay people that also are like, yeah, you can't be bi, you're just gay. But it's like that's why some of these people are saying, well, I'm still straight because I'm not going to be gay. And I
Mm-hmm.
think there's some people that are like, well, yeah, this is why I'm gay because everybody else is preferencing this or saying that this is gay. And then,
Mm-hmm.
of course, there's the whole community of folks that are actually, and I don't want to say actually, but are, they're woke and they're like, there's these different pronouns, different communities, different groups,
Mm-hmm.
and they have that understanding.
Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. This is Brandon with Gaye Magazine, and right now we are speaking with Chicago rapper, entrepreneur, activist, independent artist, and father, Taylor Bennett, here to talk about his latest single, Too Much, featuring King Louie and Lala Too Much. How are you
Man, what's
doing?
up? Hanging, man. It's hot out here. We're finally like in the summer of Chicago, and y'all are out in Atlanta, right?
Atlanta, yeah. I'm
I
physically
can't
in
really
DC right now.
see you. Oh, you're in DC
Yeah.
right now, but
Mm-hmm.
y'all in Atlanta. I can't really complain to y'all because I know it gets hot out there, but it's hot as fuck right now in the city.
And y'all are right
So it's
next to the
nice.
water. Climate
Yeah, man.
change has kicked
I got my
in.
flowers out here, man. I've been getting into that.
Hmm.
So they're doing all right. They look
Hmm.
good.
Yeah, they look good.
You know what I'm saying?
So,
Chilling, man.
first question. So, if I'm walking in the street and I'm like, you need to listen to Taylor Bennett right now, what's the
Yeah.
first song that you would recommend for them to listen to?
Ooh, that's a good one. I feel like it varies, like, based on where you are, right? Because,
Right.
like, if you're in Chicago, I would definitely recommend Too Much right now because, and we'll get into it later, but,
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole nostalgic, community, cultural connection to footwork and juke music, house music, and all of that. So, like, that would probably be what I would advise folks
The
in
number one
Chicago. But I think
choice. Hmm.
outside of Chicago, yeah, I think outside of Chicago, I probably a lot of times push people to listen to Be Yourself because I think Be Yourself
Mm-hmm.
is like one of my most vulnerable tracks that I think resonates with like a lot of different groups of people because
Mm-hmm.
it's all about self expression. So I would probably say Be Yourself, and then I think almost anywhere I'd say my biggest I think song to date is Broad Shoulders,
Definitely. Yeah.
and it's all about family.
Mm-hmm.
And who doesn't have family? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Who doesn't consider some people to be family that they love? So
Right.
I'd say those are my three contenders. But first, Broad Shoulders. Secondly, Be Yourself. And if we're in Chicago, Too
Too much, too
Much.
much. It's funny that
Yeah.
you said that. Actually, my first introduction to you was Be Yourself. I
Oh
did.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember I was in
Okay.
college. We're gonna get into it later too, but
I love
and
it.
yeah, that was my first introduction. I was like, "Who is this on the stool?" Like,
Right. Who's
yeah,
this on the stool with these rainbow baggy whiteys
yeah,
on?
yeah, and it was given
I
like
have a few different.
hmm.
Yeah, it was given birthday. I
Yeah,
still have a
birthday.
few pair. It's funny.
Hmm.
I kept them, and whenever I think about throwing them away, I'm like, nah, I shouldn't throw these away. I only wore them once, but I have like some boxer ones too.
Hmm.
I have a few different rainbow colored. Yeah,
Some
I love
memorabilia. So we're just coming off of Pride Month. Did you do anything? I know Chicago
it.
Pride is a major thing
Yeah,
for both straight and gay. So
yeah.
what did you do? Did you have any fun?
Yeah, for me, what's funny is this year I actually spent Pride a little bit different.
Okay.
I went to Everyday. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but there's a group called Everyday People.
I love Everyday
Um,
People. They just came to DC for
so
the in a
Everyday
while.
People were
Hmm.
in Chicago on Pride. So I went to Everyday People,
Oh,
and
that's
they
lit.
have snacks and all types of shit, and the community was definitely supported there. But
Hmm.
I think like Pride in Chicago is always like a big ass festival. Like I've gone. This is like my
Mm.
first year. Actually, I missed last year in Chicago Pride because I think I was in New York doing the youth Pride.
Okay.
But I made every year of Pride since I was like 14 in Chicago.
Mhm.
And Pride in Chicago, now that I've been to different cities and performed at their Prides,
Mhm.
it's different, man. Everybody comes out of Chicago, and it's like a big ass crazy party throughout the city.
Mhm.
Um, primarily, sorry about that.
Mhm.
Primarily, in like Boys Town, like in like the north side of Chicago area, is like where they have this big ass parade. But
Mhm.
also on the south side and on the west side, like there's different events. But there's all types of shit, man. Everything from day parties to club events to bar hopping. Like Chicago goes hard.
Mhm.
Like on Pride, I don't know. I think it was, and maybe I never got to check in with him. I was just like, I saw Kid Ken was doing some shit at Pride, or he was getting interviewed after
Right.
Pride. Um, and I don't know if that was in Chicago or he might have been somewhere else. But wherever it was, that shit looked crazy. And it just
Mhm.
reminded me again how crazy, the Chicago Pride usually is.
So I'm gonna take your word for it. I've been to Atlanta Pride, New York Pride, but I've never been to Chicago in general. And I heard like,
We could,
sorry.
because I've never been to Atlanta Pride. And I feel like
Oh.
Atlanta's Pride is probably so cracking.
Mhm.
Like I can only imagine how fun that shit is.
That's
So I'm
the,
definitely down.
the
Next year you can come here, and then the next year I'll come to Atlanta,
right. We'll
and
trade
we can.
off. We'll trade
Yeah,
off.
I love it.
So now with your single "Too Much," um,
Yeah,
with your verse in particular, sometimes especially with songs where the rappers are kind of rapping really fast, I try to like do it. So I was trying to get to yours part, and then as you get further, as you get further and further into the song, I was like, I can't do this. It was becoming like unnatural. So how do you do that? Like how do you
I love it.
like you know?
Um, I think my first love is hip hop,
Mm-hmm.
and the first artist that I ever like felt inspired to make hip hop music and rap music from was Twista,
Mm-hmm.
and he's from the West Side of Chicago, and he had this song with Faith Evans that was called "Hopeful,"
Mm-hmm.
and it was just a track that, as like I was living on the south side like 10 years old, it just resonated with me a lot because he talked about the idea of not making it back home, or just like the struggles of just living life, and it wasn't
Uh-huh.
glamorizing all the hip-hop materialistic shit that I love but I was used to hearing.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think from that point I was inspired by Twisted to challenge myself, not just as a writer but as a rapper.
Right, right.
So like a lot of very early music is like really fast raps. Like the first write up I ever got on Complex
Mm.
was this fast rapping song called Speed Racer,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of became a knack of mine. And I think that at a certain point as a musician, because again hip hop is my first love for music,
Mm-hmm.
but music wise, like I love rock and roll, I love blues, I love jazz, I love country music, I love everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I started to step as I evolved as a musician in those places away from it. But after doing my last project, which was an alternative rock project,
Mm-hmm.
I felt the need and the want to reconnect back with my first love of music, which was hip hop, as I kind of gauge and get ready to start working on this album.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got back into this hip hop shit, I was trying to find myself, and I was trying a lot of different moves and different, kind of verses and stuff. And at the end of the day, um, it ended up me falling back into what I had known as a child and what originally got me into it, which was the writing of it, so the content of it, and talking about, of course, dancing, juking, footworking, but then also some of the things that just as a young black person you see walking down the street in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
um, and it also made me think about again how I performed it, and I was like, this is a dance track, this could be a fun track to move with the beat and to like rap with the ad libs and to like give different seconds for the track to breathe, so that if there is somebody dancing, which I've seen on a lot of TikToks, they could do like a bow, bow, bow,
Right, a little 1-2.
exactly, or a 1-2.
Mm-hmm.
And that's stuff that I hadn't thought about in a long time. So I think that's how I got to that verse for sure.
And it's
Yeah.
crazy when I first listened to the song. So like the beat, I was like, I don't know if you know her, but Fendi the rapper.
Yeah, Fendi is my dog.
Fendi, yeah, that was the
That's my
sound. I was like, this okay, this is giving like Fendi the rapper a little bit, you know. I didn't
that's
know she was
my
from
dog.
Chicago though. I had to look
Yeah,
her up and I was like, okay, that makes sense. And
nah,
then
she from the city. Yeah, nah, she from the city. That's like family. Nah,
mhm,
I super rock with Fendi, and I mean, even she has a new record that's out right now. Um, some cat or something like that, but it's like also, and then she has some other joints that I saw she's working on that like embody even more of like that house music, footwork, dance culture. So
mhm,
yeah, no, I super fuck with Fendi. I like she's a good person and she's also an amazing artist. So
mhm.
yeah,
So yeah, I definitely noticed those similar sounds. And you mentioned
yeah,
like, Juke is definitely like an influence in the sound. Can you kind of talk about
yeah,
like the importance of Juke to Chicago, especially with the
yeah,
emphasis on house music being started in Chicago by a black gay man,
yeah.
Frankie Knuckles.
Frankie Knuckles,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people don't know this. So house music, like you said, was began in the West Loop of Chicago, and it was started by Frankie Knuckles, who actually came from New York. And when he was in New York,
Mm-hmm.
Frankie Knuckles, this is what I've been told by OGs, used to spin at a lot of different gay clubs. So there's a lot of origins of house music as well that you'll see either in our community at the clubs or you'll see at house music parties and events. But I think the importance of it was that even the culture now, like, because there's so many different steps. Like, house music was the start of ghetto house music, which was the start of things like DJ Cashmere and the Percolator
Mm-hmm.
and all of these
It's time for the
series that eventually,
percolator. It's time, yeah.
exactly,
Mm-hmm.
that eventually got us to this space in Chicago where we had a genre of music that was created by us and for us.
Mm.
And the thing that dragged me to want to make this song is, first of all, whenever anybody talks about Chicago, and this is what people got to also understand too, is like I'm independent,
Right.
so I have the creative control to make whatever sound or whatever kind of music I want to make, but also know that the majority of the industry isn't independent and they are funded by people that they're trying to sell music, so they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to get likes, they're trying to have stories, clicks, and listens. So a lot of times I think how Chicago is marketed isn't in an authentic way,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that a lot of folks that are from Chicago, whether it's me or Fenty or any of the other artists we could talk about, are heavily influenced by dance, footwork, and juke culture, but it's not something that ever really cracked the mainstream to the level
Mm.
of where outside of some of those tracks that I just referenced, in today's era, there's a focus on it. But again, what I love about it is that it's music that's made by us, usually the
Yeah.
producers and whoever's making the footworking tracks, or DJ Cashmere or Frankie Knuckles or whoever you want to say,
Right.
most of the time from our community. But then let's talk about the events that were housed based off of these songs.
Mm-hmm.
So the kickbacks, the juke parties, all of those different spaces that allow black people to come together and have self-expression, which, be yourself is like a big thing of mine.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the foundation of our communities. And it's how a lot of us met each other and how a lot of us know each other. And I think that a lot of people don't even know this, but there's definitely not everybody, but there were different cliques. Most footwork, I don't want to say most, some different sets and dance crews, of course, also have affiliations or had affiliations to
Right.
gangs because gangs is like the number one thing in Chicago. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like there was a point in time where a lot of these folks that decided to, hey, let's click up as this dance crew would push off of this street shit so that they could literally battle people over their issues. And like that's something that Chicago needs right now.
Right.
But it's just not something that again people are focused on. So that's what really drove me to do it. And I think that there's such a significance of Frankie Knuckles again bringing that style of music to Chicago and us holding on to it. And Walla Cam and shout out King AG and shout out Spin, shout out King Charles, shout out the Pope and DJ Nate and anybody that I missed.
Mm-hmm.
But all these different people that throughout the years have created again and housed these environments that were our upbringings and cultures.
Mm-hmm.
No matter if we're gay, straight, black, white, Hispanic, like we know what that shit is.
It
You
was
know what I'm
for the
saying? And there's
people. Yeah, and I was gonna
or
ask, like, what currently,
by
like,
the people,
sorry, what'd you say?
yeah, by the people
For the
for the
people,
people.
right? And I was gonna say, what's the current juke scene like? It sounds like it's really not. It's not as strong as of a scene as it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like with the times things change. I think
Mm-hmm.
that like I just said, there were different pioneers and people that really took the juke culture and footwork culture to a level that we hadn't seen before. Like shout out to Creation,
Mm-hmm.
and which is an amazing footwork crew that did an interview on My Block TV that Sway conducted. That I talked to him
Mm-hmm.
about this year, and some of them called into the interview. But those people were pushing the culture to a point where it's it. I don't think a lot of other folks have taken it, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that again, when it comes to music, as a musician, this is our livelihood.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you always have to be not just creating something successful, but also creating something that's successful that people can also buy so that you can live.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's a lot of, for one, people that are pushed towards or to rap about the things that they see other Chicago artists having success from at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also think that, like throughout the generations, the ideals of the juke culture and the dance culture, I think, in ways were watered down. And some of those things, because they didn't become mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot more kids in Chicago that are younger than me, not my age, but that know how to do the Crank That Soldier Boy better than they might know how to footwork. Not
Mm-hmm.
saying they don't know how to footwork, but instead of being introduced to the rink and again like the percolator and thick hose and all these other mixes and things, they were introduced to Soldier Boy and like the TV, and that Soldier Boy of course is very influenced by Atlanta and
Of
Chicago
course,
dance
yeah.
culture,
Mm-hmm.
so, and then also when we used to go to juke parties, by the time I was at juke parties, we weren't playing the percolator at parties, we would play fucking Let It Burn by Usher and Slow Grind.
Mm-hmm.
So like even our understanding of juke culture, like it took me making this song and actually diving into the history of it to understand how influential and important it was and pivotal in changing music and dance culture. Because when I was a kid, I just thought juking was slow grinding, and I thought that footworking was footworking, and I
Mm.
didn't know
They
that
were like
there were certain
together.
tracks, certain producers, exactly, and that in a large way, footworking was a sector of the juke culture that then broke off into its own thing, and then in a lot of ways advanced to spaces around the world that juke hasn't or doesn't.
Mm.
Um, so I also feel an importance, I think, as an artist, being from Chicago and also being an independent, being in control of the creative process to create music that creates these environments for people like me,
Mm-hmm.
and to popularize things that also I like to think about shit, like big, like Disney or McDonald's. So I don't always like to be like, yo, this is what's cracking, let's do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now even though, like you said, I think the Jew culture in Chicago was kind of simmering down, I see, and I think we'll see in the next few months, there's a lot of artists that are making like footwork and juke tracks because I think they see their success in it. And
Especially like Jersey
you
Club
know,
and stuff like that.
especially like Jersey Club, like
Mm-hmm.
that. And I think the whole thing about it, a guy that I look at a lot of his business stuff, he says that it's not the lack of demand, it's the lack of supply, because if you don't
Nice.
know that it exists, then how can you demand it? So
Right.
I think for me it's always about trying to figure out things that maybe do click with people that maybe they don't really see, and then bringing that to the forefront and having something new, but most of the time trying to make it positive,
Mm-hmm.
and have that initiative. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it sounds like juke is, from being from like the DMV, it kind of reminds me, do you know like of go-go music and like beating your
of
feet?
course.
It seems like, and there's a lot of
Yeah,
parallels,
hell yeah.
like a regional parallels depending on where you're at. You know what I mean?
And this was the thing that, and again, like I didn't just end up doing this juke song on some like, and I know we'll get into this later in the
Mm-hmm.
interview, but I didn't just do this shit like on some, yo, I'm from Chicago, and like this is like what it like. I did it for that reason, but also like I'm a music
You
historian,
you have a
like,
love for
and that
music.
when it comes. I have a love for music, but black music and black music business.
Mm.
And the project that I had done before this again was an alternative rock
Coming of
project, and it
age.
coming of age.
Mm-hmm.
And I started working on that from looking at what Muddy Waters had done, from looking at Sam Cooke, looking at Berry Gordy, and I started researching these different events and these historic icons and seeing the changes that they made by doing either the business or the music and the
Mm.
creation. And I just happened, because when I did that study, I found out so much stuff about Chicago in terms of the music industry, whether it's Cadillac Records, the United Brothers that were like the first black distribution company in
Mm.
America, and they drove around to different radio stations doing payola to get records played from Chicago, and then ended up in turn getting these artists huge record deals. Like they invented that marketing process.
Mm-hmm.
Or I forget the lady's name, but she actually owned the rights to the Beatles when they first came to America, and worked with the Jacksons when they would drive up from Gary, Indiana to record
Oh
their
wow.
first records. So there was all this history in Chicago. Fast forward, I got to house music, and we were talking about Frankie
Right.
Knuckles. And for the first time out of all this music I've been doing this historical studying or research on, this was the first thing that I knew an inch about. I knew what
Mm.
juking was, I knew what footworking was, and I actually saw a way to make a connection and a story that bridged the gap of generations. And the reason why I brought this up is you talked about, like beating your feet or
Mm-hmm.
go-go dancing
Mm-hmm.
or those different in Chicago. And I had to think about this again from like a strategic and creative standpoint. There's a lot of TikTok dances that go viral, but how many of them actually have a historic cultural representation piece
Mm-hmm.
involved? Not a lot of them. And it started to make me wonder, like, why aren't there footwork challenges? Why aren't there Memphis juking challenges? But
Mm-hmm.
most importantly, this song, I think the reason why it's been so successful is that it crosses generations. So there's grandmothers that knew what house music were, knew what juking was. There's dads that went to footworking parties. There's kids that know what juking is. And it brings a community or our group of people together.
Mm-hmm.
And again, not just our music, but a lot of hip hop music, there's a disconnect. So like when I was growing up, my mom loved Outkast,
Mm-hmm.
right? But she couldn't play Outkast in the car because there was a lot of, and when I
Yeah.
grew up, I loved Lil Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't play Lil Wayne in the car with my dad because he was saying hella crazy shit.
Mm-hmm.
And it creates a disconnect where now, in order to do the things that your generation or what you're interested in, you have to separate from your family. So I feel like this Juke song has the ability to bring these multiple generations together. But on the bigger level of what you were saying, I hope that it inspires other black artists or other artists from their communities to get behind whatever this cultural dance is that's shared through generations and start to push that narrative, because within that story there's a connection for our age brackets and our
Right.
groups.
Instead of these
So that was all.
instead of these commodified the boom boom 1 2 dances on TikTok and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
hell
Like
yeah.
let's be real with
And
it.
not that I'm against those, but just like,
Yeah.
why do those when we could do us?
Right.
And the truth is, every culture doesn't have that.
And I think it's that history
We do.
piece too. Like I think a lot, especially youth, they're disconnected from the history, as we all always are. But not always, you know what I
Yeah.
mean. But um,
No, well, always, and it's not always our fault. Most of the times, it's
it's
not.
it's very
You're talking about black
intentional,
people not knowing our history,
right?
like hey,
Now, so
so yeah,
for the too much video, which is definitely like it gives like I'm in a party, you know what I mean? Something I would definitely play before going out. Now, just to confirm, did you co-direct with
yeah,
D Gaines? So you co-directed with D Gaines, who is a huge figure in Chicago. What was that
yeah.
experience like? Is this the first time working with him at like
Hell
with the
yeah,
director hat? Like, how was that experience
yeah.
like? What was going on?
It was crazy. I'll say it like this, and I'm glad you brought it up. Again, the whole purpose of doing this project was to bring Chicago together and to bridge these different gaps. And when I was growing up in Chicago, D Gaines um, was like legendary
Mm-hmm.
because he broke all the biggest Chicago artists: Chief Keef,
Lil
Lil
Durk.
Durk,
Mm-hmm.
King Louie, he
Mm-hmm.
got banned, Sasha Go Hard. The list just goes on. And when I was a kid, I always wanted to get music videos from him, but I didn't have enough money. I was just starting my career off.
Mm-hmm.
And also, at that point in time, I think what D Gaines was working on and the folks that he was working with, even though a lot of them were my homies, were pushing a bit different of a message than what I was saying and what I was rapping about.
Mm.
So fast forward all these years later, I end up having a track with King Louis, who I mentioned has mega hits that was
Yeah.
shot by D Gaines, and I also have this Juke track, and we're trying to figure out who we want to shoot it and who we want to direct it and capture it. And shout out to my creative director for Everband. He was like, "You should get D Gaines to shoot the video. I feel like he would be down."
Mm.
And honestly, when he first said it, I was like, "Oh no,"
You're like,
because
yeah,
I know
yeah.
what kind of videos D Gaines kind of shoots. I know
Mm.
what I want this video to be. But it was actually the best recommendation because D Gaines is also a Chicago kid. So
Mm.
even if it wasn't something that he had captured or put out before, it was nostalgic and purposeful to him.
Oh,
So
okay.
working with him on this was super dope because I got to see him do things that he told me I've never done this. We've
Mm.
never set, this stuff up like this.
Was
And then
this
I
your
think
first
on
time
another
directing, like a music
this was
video?
like this was my first time directing, I think, to this extent for sure.
Okay.
There's been other videos that I've worked with, but the difference with this shoot is, and it was really cool, is like, it was very strategic. So the video, like the party scenes in the video, are actually on my birthday. Like that's my
Oh, that
real
was on your
birthday.
birthday.
That's my birthday. I threw a
Oh,
party called the Biggest Juke Party for my birthday,
okay.
and I told everybody it was going to be a video shoot, and we packed it out with like 1,000 people, and we just threw a
Oh.
big ass juke party, and we marketed the song as at the party, but also beforehand with different influencers. So by the time we did the video, everybody was like, "Oh shit." Not only am I in this video, but I know the words, and now I'm super hyped for it to come out. So it's kind of like
Mm.
a marketing strategy. But from that standpoint, what D Gaines had told me is like, I've never set up as big of a set as this or something that had this much pre-production.
Mhm.
And what I said to him, which is true, is like, I feel like when it comes to like media and TV, a lot of times hip hop videos, they don't look like they have the same budgets as pop videos, and they don't look like they have the same budgets as. And for me and you, because we're in the industry, we might just say, "Hey, that's a budget thing." So like maybe they didn't have the same amount of money as, I don't know, say whatever pop artists,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But on a deeper span, a lot of times they do have the same budgets, and there's a purpose within them shooting in the ways that they shoot.
Mhm.
So it's like I know a lot of rappers, and also I'll just speak from my own experience. I've gone to a lot of people like, "Hey, I got this idea for this video shoot," and they're like, "All right, that's gonna be $75,000," and I'm
Mhm.
like, "How is it $75,000 to do this?" And they're like, "Well, it's this, and this," and I'm like, "Okay, give me a breakdown budget," and I look at it, and they're trying to pay, you know, somebody $7,500 to come there for 2 hours,
Mm.
and like just basically saying this to say that I think that it is with intent that a lot of times hip hop videos aren't built out to be as big as they can. But when you do get an artist, for example, like Jay-Z, that he has that budget, they're working on that shit. Jay-Z videos don't look like no other rapper videos.
Mhm.
A lot of Jay-Z videos still today, if you go look at him on PJs and in these little cars, look better than most rappers' videos.
Mhm.
But it's because they were so invested with the treatment, with the budget, with the detailing. So it's always been a purpose of mine as well to show rap music on a high caliber level and scale, which I think people aren't really used to seeing. So that's what also made it cool too, was like knowing that an idea that I had, and I'm not a director,
Mhm.
was now pushing him as a director to advance his vision was
Mhm.
dope.
And it sounds like you try to make it, of course, as organic and authentic as possible. You got a Chicago crowd, a legendary Chicago figure, legendary Chicago music. And it sounds
Yeah,
like I can imagine you already had a relationship with King Louis, but it sounds like all
of
three of
course.
y'all kind of had a connection because it just gave like in harmony. It was like hot potato. She
Yeah.
was passing off to him, Louis passed it off to you, and it just felt
Yeah.
together. It's easy to listen
No,
to over and
bro.
over and over.
Yeah, and I do have an amazing relationship with King Louis. Like I said, when me and Chance first started making music in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
the music scene was bubbling for both drill and for this alternative rap music or whatever you want to call it.
Oh.
So like a lot of artists didn't work with, say, drill artists,
Mm-hmm.
um, and like if you were a conscious, it was like a whole little thing. And I remember one of the first artists that I did my first big track with before I did a track with Chance was King Louis. When I was like 16, it was called New Chevy, and it was my first hit that I've ever done. Um, and the reason why I wanted to do the song even back then was, again, I think a lot of times the way that people are perceived or promoted through media is with the reasoning to make money off of it. So it's for clicks, but you don't really get to see the personality of so many people you read stories about.
Mm-hmm.
And King Louis was one of those people that just felt like a big cousin to me.
Mm-hmm.
And, not just myself, but if you look at his track record, he's worked with almost every artist from Chicago, and he's always been somebody that's about pushing the city forward and not letting politics really get so much in the way.
Mm-hmm.
So when I did this track and it was a juke track, I automatically knew who needed to go on it because I know how not just myself, but other artists and other people feel about him.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lala, again, I think that was like the cool kind of twist on it. Is Lala is younger than me, so she's definitely younger than Louis. I think she's like 3 years younger than me. So she kind of had that like energy, but also I think was able to bring this juke culture, footwork
Yeah.
culture to another generation and to
Mm-hmm.
reawake the conversations for some of those kids that never even went to like a slow grind juke party or never were in a footwork circle or, everybody in the club stand on the walls now.
Right.
She been speaking very vocal about the fact that she feels like this song is changing that and that people are telling her, hey, play your song, that shit gonna make people dance,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a good feeling, man.
And
Yeah.
you mentioned kind of, especially with the video, having it at a certain level, and I know you emphasize yourself being a lyricist. Do you feel like in today's kind of like scene, do you feel like a lot of rap is kind of like fast food rap? Like, let's just hurry up, put it out there. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah, I think we're like and I don't in like a commoditized era right now. So
mm-hmm.
I think like, everybody wants to be entertained,
Mm-hmm.
Um, I find myself very often being frustrated when I get like my perfect food that I want and I get home and then I sit in front of the TV and I don't know what to watch, so I can't start eating. I know that sounds weird. I don't know if everybody
No, it
does
don't
that,
sound
but
weird.
listen,
I'm kind of the same. Yeah.
it's become an expectation for me
Yeah.
because I'm used to being able to eat this food and see a new episode of whatever and see, who's dropping. And when I get on my Instagram, there's always something in politics, something in rap, and I think that there is a need to feed the masses, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like from a label standpoint, um like music wise, I do think there's a lot of people that are labels that are like, I don't know what to do right now, like I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to sell a record or how to, what I do know is I have this money,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's like a big thing why I've never signed a deal, is because I think that a lot of times when labels give you an advance or they pay you money, they're not paying you so they can help you because they know the perfect strategy and formula to blow you up to the biggest. They're usually paying you because they see that you have money that's coming in. They might have a few connections to higher up what you're doing, but they're not going to come write a song for you.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to, so I feel like, again, there's a lot of labels out now that are looking at TikTok, looking at Instagram, looking at YouTube, trying to figure out how to find and buy the new sound.
And it sounds like a lack of
Um,
development. So it's like,
it's a lack of development.
yes.
Yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lack of authenticity. Like,
Mm-hmm.
again, I think a lot of folks that, you know, so uh, another person that I listen to that I talk to a lot said this to me one time. There's the music business,
Mm-hmm.
which is music and technology, or there's music. So there's, I'm sorry,
You're good. You're
there's the
good.
music, and the music industry is music and technology meeting together. So like
Right.
iPods, like streaming services, and then there's the music business, which is having the ability to hold that information from the masses until you properly figure out how to monetize it. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of folks that they find technology, they find music, they find whatever it is, any artist creation that is going to get that person to gyrate, and then they're like, let's buy that.
Get that
And I
movement.
think that
Yeah.
in today's society, even more than back with Motown, the ability to create a record isn't something that you necessarily, and this is what we're really talking about, need to have Aretha Franklin's voice to do, or
Mm-hmm.
need to have Michael Jackson's moves to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, music at this point is usually created and consumed by just the general people. Like, we want to see somebody make a hit song, blow up, listen, play their song out, and then kind of watch their story.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't really care too much, I don't think, anymore to see, you know, these different celebrities and people, as in with politics, become kings and queens and rule over the industry forever. Like, and I
Mm-hmm.
agree with that in a lot of ways. Like, I don't think, you know, I think there's a lot of artists that, you know, have been able to stay where they are and not, you know, maybe rightfully or deservingly so, because at that point they might have these resources and have these things. And it's like, you know, again, as an avid music lover, I love hearing music, all kinds of music from everybody and anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the industry is having trouble trying to figure it out right now. But I don't think that we as people should be looking at the industry as much as we do. And I think it'd be great to get back a little bit more to underground artists and supporting up and rising artists,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, really seeing the success through their journeys, because that's how I got on. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And it's not a lot of that anymore. You
And
know?
do you feel like, say, I know you were saying like Juke is kind of encapsulated specifically to Chicago right now. Are you afraid, or I shouldn't even say are you afraid, but say it blows up. Are you afraid
Everybody
of
gets scared.
are you afraid of it getting commercialized along the way and diluted once it reaches a national scale? Because I feel like I see that happen to a lot of, let's just say, genres or regional sounds. And it's like, oh, is this, if this is
Yeah,
popping, let's commodify it. This is, and then nationwide, say someone like me, I'm from Maryland, I don't really know what authentic juke is or not. So you could kind of fool me and
right.
like, oh, this is juke. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah. So
mm-hmm,
like my kind of, I guess my kind of thought on it um, was kind of like, so I think juke music is amazing, right?
mm-hmm,
Like, I think it's fire, right? I think footworking is an elemental dance, like, of its own. Like, I, even though, like, you know, there's all kinds of different dances, I don't think anything's like footworking, right? Um,
mm-hmm,
but I choose not to, and chose not to, you know, when I do interviews, just speak about the origins of footwork and these successful folks that have come from it, or the imprint. Because footwork, you know, there's been footworkers in Missy Elliott videos, there's been footworkers on 106 and Park, you know, juke music,
mm-hmm,
house music, like we talked about Frankie Knuckles. He's, you know, world renowned, you know. But instead of talking about that, what I loved about juke music and footworking and what the culture meant to me was inclusion and an environment and a space for me to
mm-hmm,
go.
mm-hmm,
And there's a lot of different people. Shout out to Dr. Battles, that's actually working on a footworking documentary right now, that's just speaking about how when Section 8, because again, the gangs are bigger than the footwork and shit. So when Section 8 happened and they went and knocked down the Robert Taylor homes, they went and knocked down Cabrini Green and gentrified all of those areas, they put all these different black people that were already normalized and neutralized in their own communities spread out across Chicago.
mm-hmm,
What also happened is those different dance halls that they used to have footwork battles and juke parties at either closed down or stopped allowing them to come because they were no longer a part of the community. And that's how footworking battles and juke parties started to be happening in the basement of a house, or footwork battles happening at the Republican parade or just outside in the street or in the alley, because they didn't have a space. But then they also realized that they didn't need a space, because it wasn't about just the genre of music. It wasn't about the house that it was held in. It was all about the fact that they were getting together as a community, and you can revolt and strategize anywhere, and that's something that goes all the way back to how Kendrick just brought up with the Not Like Us video, slaves and dancing, and us, gathering on Sundays in these different spaces and amongst each other, celebrating and dancing and conversing. Like that is what I see through juke and through footwork music. So I'm sure a lot of people won't be like, oh shit, I know how to footwork now, or oh shit, now I love juke music. But as long as they can, and that's why I was even saying earlier, if they can relate the cultural similarities to Memphis juking or to go-go dancing or to whatever it is, and they can say, hey, I see that the movement isn't about us dancing, but it's about us getting back together as a community, they can make their own too much. Like they can make their own version of that shit. I'm cool with that shit, because that's what this is about. It's about, again, tapping into something that I don't think a lot of people are seeing, and then advancing it to the point where people start to see opportunities to make money from positive things.
That definitely makes
That
sense.
makes sense.
So you're a father, right? You're an artist as well. How do you kind of juggle those worlds? You have 3 sons, and
Yes.
how do you do that?
Um, I would just say balance, man. Like
Yeah,
that's my biggest thing that I tell
balance.
everybody. Like balance, man. Because I do have a lot. I have 3 children. I have my own career. I manage my brother.
Mm-hmm.
I have my partner
Mm-hmm.
that we still have to, when we're together, love each other, and
Mm-hmm.
and there's like a lot of just things, and then on top of that, of course, I'm me. So whenever I go outside, someone's like, "Oh, hey, yo, blah blah blah, blah, blah."
Right, you
So it's
gotta.
like the key to all of it is balance, man. Like do things. My advice is like do things that you'll be proud of, and do things that you enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
and live life. Because I'm a huge fan of Gaye Magazine,
Mm-hmm.
and this is an interview that I wanted to do. And this is, believe it or not, this is like my personal time right now. But
Mm-hmm.
this is how I wanted to. I know it sounds crazy, but this is from what is it? Oh no, we're past my personal time. But here nor there,
Okay.
this is what I want to do. And I think a lot of times I find myself being able to enjoy myself with my family, because I know that's where I want to be. Being able to enjoy myself making music, because I know
Mm-hmm.
that's what I want to do. Being able to enjoy myself being openly who I am,
Mm-hmm.
because I know that's who I
Mm-hmm.
am. And nothing's easy. Everything's hard for everybody, but nothing good comes easy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just one day at a time. I think just balancing it, man.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing more important in this world than my children to me.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's interviews, or it's through my music, or if it's through me speaking to them, as long as they understand that, and they know that all these different things that I'm doing are in some way to help benefit them, then I'm cool.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think it's a beautiful thing, and I'll say it as well. I'm very blessed. Like I do love to make music. Like this is what I've always wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been successful at it. Successful enough, to do what I want to do for my family,
Mm-hmm.
and to continue to be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that's a blessing, man, because it's not like that for everybody in this world, and it's not something that I take for granted. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying?
They might have to
You see,
feel
I got my
like.
flowers.
Mhm.
Yeah,
They might have
my
to feel like
flowers and
they.
shit. Water.
You said the flowers.
Now I was saying watering my flowers and shit, like doing stuff that I want to
Oh
do.
yeah, for you.
I
Yeah.
I just got into gardening like a week and a half ago, and I
Mm-hmm.
put these joints out there. But hey,
Yeah,
if you
and
don't, they
like what you said, a lot of people feel like they got to choose one or the other, and usually the other involves not incorporating themselves and what they need in that balance, giving up
yeah,
something for another.
yeah,
So that definitely makes sense with what you're saying about the balance.
oh
So
yeah, and I
now,
think like
okay, go ahead. Mhm.
no, I was just gonna say, yeah. I mean, I think like I was just having one of my therapy sessions earlier, and something that we were talking about or speaking to was, even within myself, like nothing's perfect. So like even for myself,
Right.
we were talking about the fact, like I said, I go outside on jogs or running, and I might have different people, coming up to me and stopping me and talking to me about my
Hmm.
song, and it's like I love it, but it's like I'm trying to exercise. Like literally,
Yeah,
my
you're a
body
person
needs
that's
to
just trying to
escape.
be out. Yeah, and I saw something. It was a while ago, but I saw something about you skateboarding too to kind of like avoid that as
Yeah,
well. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. I like, what's
Mm-hmm.
funny is that um, I was telling my therapist this. I run outside, I jog a lot, I love to exercise. And it's funny, when I first started, I used to walk, and I just started walking again like 2 weeks ago instead of jogging through the whole thing. And then I remember why I stopped
Mm-hmm.
walking. And I had stopped walking because when I walk, people start approaching me and talking to me because they have enough time to see me. So
Mm-hmm.
usually when I'm outside, I'm like running and shit, which is cool, but who wants to run all the time? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No.
But just saying that
No.
to say, like, everything's not perfect. Everybody has something in some way. But it's
Mm-hmm.
life and it's balance, and you take it again one punch at a time, one day at a time. You know?
Definitely. Definitely. Now, kind of switching gears a little bit. So obviously, our audience and your fans know that you are openly bisexual. So I know you came out
Sure.
a day before your birthday, a day before your 21st birthday.
Which was
And
long
I
as
feel
I was
like
like,
I feel like
so
I've seen a lot of how you respond to just like, did you do it for yourself? But from what I gathered, I feel like you kind of came out more for other people. Like you use yourself as a channel.
yeah,
Do you feel
yeah.
like that might be true, or do you feel like it was for yourself?
I think I go back and forth. Honestly, I'm gonna be the most legit answer for Gay Magazine.
That's real.
I go
That's
back
real.
on if because sometimes I'll say it feels more beneficial for uh, myself, because
Hmm.
again, like outside of me being the artist Taylor Bennett, I'm still Taylor Bennett. Like I'm a
Right.
person. So
Right.
when I go
Right.
places, I know that people know who I am. And I know that might sound weird to anybody that's watching this, is not gay or not openly whatever, but like there's a comfort and a respect for myself that I find in that,
Hmm.
especially seeing and knowing how many other, not just men, but just people in general will never have the comfort or the satisfaction of being present. You get what I'm saying? Of
Mm-hmm.
who you are. Like that's like a big thing.
Being like
So I feel like
conscious of themselves, like
conscious, but being fucking not just conscious, aware of yourself. Like I don't
aware.
know, and
Okay.
I don't know if everybody feels like this, but how I feel about it is I don't have any secrets. Like if we're having a
Mm,
conversation and you're talking to me, there's a lot of people, and I think this is also, but then also I'll say this too. I'm bisexual, right?
right.
So there's a lot of people, whether they're gay or straight, that just don't believe that bisexual is an option,
Mm-hmm.
or is like an existing preference.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, I think my whole thing is I always have felt that it's funny because I feel like there are a lot of straight people that say like you can't be bi, you can just be gay. And then again, I know a few gay people that also are like, yeah, you can't be bi, you're just gay. But it's like that's why some of these people are saying, well, I'm still straight because I'm not going to be gay. And I
Mm-hmm.
think there's some people that are like, well, yeah, this is why I'm gay because everybody else is preferencing this or saying that this is gay. And then
Mm-hmm.
of course there's the whole community of folks that are actually, and I don't want to say actually, but are, they're woke and they're like, there's these different pronouns, different communities, different groups, and
Mm-hmm.
they have that understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So like I also feel like there's a big side off of that. And then I think another thing, of course, is right after I came out as openly bisexual, I think it was maybe like the next year I had my son. So
Mm.
there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of, I've never had a public relationship or anything that, the world would know
Right.
about. And I think that there is a big, which I understand, because again, I think representation is important. There's people that are like, yo, if this nigga is gay or if this nigga is bi, I want to see him kissing somebody because this is what I do. And I
Mm.
feel like the shell is hollow without it.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other side to that, which is why I continue to always say that, I'm openly bisexual, I am in a committed relationship, is that representation does matter. And that in a lot of the spaces that I'm at, shout out like FYBJ Main that I did an interview with,
Mm-hmm.
folks might not be privy at all to any conversations of any gay, bisexual, trans, any of those things. And
Mm-hmm.
the only times that they venture to those conversations might be in a joking manner or in an insulting manner, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like for me, being in these spaces and being able to speak about it freely and openly and comfortably and still garnish respect from the other side is a statement in itself. And I think that for me, I love gay people, I love straight people, I'm bisexual. And I think there are other bisexual people, kids that are out there,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like I'm representation for them. And I don't think just because, and I've seen this before, and I think it was either Lena Bloom or EJ King. So shout out to both of them. I love y'all.
Mm-hmm.
But years ago, I think it was on one of my birthdays, they had just said something that made me think about it, which is they were like, yeah, I love Taylor. Shout out to him for still living and being himself and, still supporting. And basically, not, they didn't say this like this, but how I took it was like, shout out to Taylor for not just getting with some girl and then trying to backpedal on the whole bisexual
Yeah.
thing and just this route. And I think that for me, that means something because, again, just because you are committed doesn't mean that you feel different about your sexual preferences. And I don't want anybody to ever feel like that's the right thing or like the option or the way to move
Mm-hmm.
past that. You know what I'm saying?
And like what you said, representation is important. There's a spectrum. There's a spectrum of every single thing. So of course there are bisexual men that have kids with a woman. You know what I mean? It's not one singular existence or one singular way. So I hear what you're saying with that,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. So you kind of touched a little bit on kind of your past, especially around the time that you came out. Um,
Yeah.
have you ever had a boyfriend in the past or not? And with the emphasis on what was your mindset like before you came out?
I'd say my mindset was before I came out was very, I would say, I don't know. I don't really know how to express it
Mm-hmm.
because I think that there's a clarity that I kind of pointed to earlier in this interview that you get and that I feel from being open and being who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to describe that cloud. I don't know if it's because I'm so far away from it or if it's because it's just something that I never saw before it was gone. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Um, But when I came out as bisexual, y'all saw that album cover and y'all see me now, I turned the fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there was a confidence boost in a lot of different spaces of my life. But I think one of the most was within my subconscious and how I felt about myself and the respect that I had for myself,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Because I knew what I said, but I didn't know how people were going to react to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that seeing the respect that I got from who I am, it makes me respect myself more every day,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
And it seemed like you got a lot of
So,
affirmation from the people around you. From what I understand, you didn't even tell like your parents or your brother
I didn't,
Chance. Yeah, you just
I
tweeted
didn't
it.
tell anybody.
Uh-huh.
I tweeted it. Yeah. Yeah, I tweeted it. It's perks of, being a millennial or being, a kid of the future is I didn't have to consistently come out. And I talk about this a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but I do believe that when you come out, nobody comes out once because you come out, but then you have to keep coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to keep coming out, keep coming out, keep coming out.
Mhm.
Whether if that's just a random introduction of somebody asking your sexual preference and you saying yes, I'm gay, or if it's like, okay, I told my mom, my aunt, now I got to tell my friends. Okay, I told
Right.
my friends, now I got to tell my sister. Oh, my cousin in Maryland, I didn't tell them, and now they're here, I got to tell them. Like,
Right.
and I also think that, and I've seen that before, where there are people, and it's like a big topic on TV shows and shit, where there's people that do come out and then they end up, you find out, like their partner finds out later they never told their dad, or they never told
Mm.
their fucking cousin, or they never, and then they're in these spaces and
And that's a
situations where
burden.
they're,
That's a burden on that person.
hell yeah. That's what I'm saying. So
Mhm.
that's how I felt.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
it sounds like with that clarity that you had, it from what I'm hearing, it sounds like it might be hard to think about your mindset because it's almost as if you were like a whole different person in a way, like before you
Yeah.
came out and then when you came out, you know.
Yeah, a lot. And like I said, I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of things that once I did that, I felt more confident about trying everything, you know, and that's why,
Mhm.
like I said, I think I
Mhm.
got into fitness the way that I did. The reason why I went after my music the way that I did and started trying rock and roll, and then I was on Good Morning America and Kelly Clarkson and like all these spaces that I honestly couldn't have seen the old Taylor Bennett in because I wasn't my
Mhm.
full self. As I said earlier, I wasn't present. I feel present everywhere now, every day,
Mhm.
right now, you know.
Mhm. And especially with that past, like just the first part of that series of questions, I guess, like, have you had any relationships or experiences with just guys in the past?
Um, so I don't want to answer that question. The reason why I don't is
Okay.
that I know that if I say that I did, then it'll create friction, and I don't
Okay.
want people to start popping like, "Yeah, I used to date that nigga." Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I know that sounds crazy, but that's why I usually don't bring it up.
That's fair. It's whatever you're comfortable
So,
with. It's
so,
You're good. And with like, I know you were talking about a lot of like pressure, and we talked about choosing sides or whatever. But do you feel like there's been a pressure to include like your sexuality in your music or your lyrics, um, or even visuals?
um, yeah, I think that, yeah, I think the funny part is, so when I first came out, I had already had like a fully finished project that I was ready to drop. Like I wasn't even thinking about the timeline of any of that. Like I was thinking about myself when I came out.
Okay.
And I would say it was just like a few months after, maybe even the next month, that I dropped this project, one of my biggest projects called Restoration of American Idol. And I had like Lil Yachty on it
Mhm.
and Jeremiah and Kid Super Duper Kyle and like just all these big features and stuff. And the Fader came and they did a write up on it. And the guy that came was I don't remember his name, but he was a cool dude. He was gay though. He was cool, and
Mhm.
I remember doing the whole interview with him. It was fun. It was cool. Walked around, did a bunch of shit, and then the interview came out, and this was like the premiere for my project. And within the article, he said, you know, although the music is great, and you know all these things about it, blah blah blah. He was like, you know, the one thing that Taylor didn't do that was probably his surest bet for PR and success is talk about his sexuality or talk about his preferences as an artist. And then what he said that really fucked me up is that at the end he was like, there's a lot of artists that are gay or are whatever, and they never speak about it in their music. And he basically questioned if that was the kind of artist that I was, and if I would ever speak on my sexuality, or if that would be something that I would keep separate based off the climate of
Like
hip
your
hop
brand.
and those things,
Mhm. Mhm.
like my brand and like hip hop
Mhm.
and like me rapping about be yourself or putting on rainbow tidy whities, wouldn't sell. And like I've said this in other interviews, but I went to my agents and people when I started working on Be Yourself, and I
Mhm.
showed them the cover art like before the project came out, and I told them where I wanted to go.